Before we get going, actually, this kind of ties into what we're going to be discussing today with this whole Comic-Con thing. But thank you all so much. We got a big boost not too long ago because we figured out what was going on with our email system and why those emails weren't going out to you all. There's a lot of folks that don't use social media that were previous customers of the Rippaverse, and they just probably found out about this. So check this out. We're at 1.59. Ironic, they're about to hit 1.6. Over 23,000 books sold or donated. And, man, still off to a roaring start. I appreciate the support. Thank you all so much. You can still, of course, get in on iSum too. Look, we still got 2 months left in this campaign, which is insane. It's going to be interesting to see where we end up with our book total. So thank you all again for the continued support. But today I want to talk about something here. And, you know, a few days ago, this happened, right? Comic-Con with Marvel, Netflix, Sony, HBO, and Universal. They're skipping out on San Diego Comic-Con, which is really the only, I guess, technical Comic-Con. All these other spots just call themselves Comic-Con, but I think, like Dallas Comic-Con is now Fan Expo and all the different companies, let's say that are actually running those. Nonetheless, this is like the big one, right? San Diego Comic-Con. And all of these people aren't showing up. So they're right now struggling to try to fill in the gaps here. And this happens because it might be a combination of several different things. You have this writer strike, potential actors strike, pushing material back. So maybe these guys don't have anything to show. But I think it more so speaks to a far bigger issue that, of course, isn't really going through in this. And that is, if you remember, I mentioned this, years ago, and I did not like the trend that the comic book industry was going in, where they were trying to become so reliant on the normie appeal. And the normie medium had always been like movies and TV, right? That's where people go. It's easy to digest. And they wanted that crowd. So you had the growth of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which of course lended itself to that. But you weren't growing the comic book industry by doing that. In fact, you can see the unit sales over the years. It's almost like it had an opposite impact, or at minimum, it had no impact at all. And that's the part that needed to get discussed, because I'm sitting here like, guys, and I remember doing all these videos discussing this, like what's going to happen is you're going to let these guys who have other intentions, even people that are not writing books, are like, they're writing like rejected scripts, movie scripts, but they're going to burn this bad boy to the ground. And then what's going to end up happening is that we're going to be left, actual comic book fans are going to be left with the ashes. Now, I can look at it like a positive thing. Now, San Diego Comic-Con might not look at it as a positive thing, but getting back to the roots of what this is, like an actual comic conference where people go and meet artists and you could still have some sort of representation with regard to big, like the Marvels and the DCs of the world. But it's so heavily normie centric these days from folks that are not interested at all in this stuff, maybe in cosplaying it. And I'm not knocking cosplayers by any means. I'm just saying, like, that's kind of what these conferences have been. It's like big. It's not, let me say this. Most of these guys are not in it for the actual books. They don't care. They like the idea of these characters that maybe they've seen on TV, or even maybe in a comic, but like secondhand, right? Some screenshot or something, and people are talking about it. And good friend, Mark Millar, he's a fan. I'm a fan of him. Big shout out to him. And he, Neurotic had posted this thing here, and I'll show you guys before I go back to it, where it shows San Diego Comic-Con 2023 schedule is empty because, again, there's a lot of people that aren't showing up. So now they got to try to fill in the gaps for the show. By the way, San Diego Comic-Con themselves have not contacted us. Biggest story right now in independent comics. Again, we have not been contacted by anybody over there at all. And it is what it is. Though there are some like different panels and stuff that people want me to speak on, but it's not coming from them. But he brings up 2 good points that I want to address. The first one being, he says a comic fan will buy 5 books a week, maybe even more. Someone who just liked the movie will buy one and maybe a Batman bobblehead. Comics need to see fans as primary market again and take the stages back at these shows. Yeah, they became so movie and TV centric. And, I brought this up with the relationship with like manga and anime where they're hand in hand. One sells the other. That does not happen with the American comic books at all, really. These guys will pretend to like stuff, again, just to be a part of the conversation. We see that all the time, but these guys don't actually buy a comic book. So if you're going to become so heavily reliant on a declining part of the market, because again, that's what normies do. It's not because of quote unquote fatigue. It's because, well, normies tend to go with what's trendy. So they'll move on to the next thing. They may end up coming back, but they'll move on to the next thing. He also brings up this great point. He says, "I've become obsessed with this the past couple of days. I really think we allowed a biz to be consumed by another industry at these shows." That's a fact. You allowed them to be so focused on TV, actors, actresses, and it became less about the actual comic books. He says, consumed by another industry at these shows, clapping the talent up to our old green room, and very few of these new mainstream fans actually buy comics. Very few, if at all any. If any. It is very, very few of these cats that are going out there and buying these books. They are not genuinely interested in this material. They're normies, man, and not the normies that are going to become comic book fans, which a lot of people were normies before they became fans of comic book. But these are guys that only like the idea of stuff. So the comic book industry, specifically the American comic book industry, has to figure out how to do basically both things. Number one, take it back, make it about the actual comics, but they also have to be able to get enthusiasm. And the reason why they can't do that is because they don't even actually know their market. They've also been infiltrated from the actual books or in the actual publishing market per se. And they have people that don't actually understand what it is to make a comic or comic universe that people can be interested in and enthusiastic about. They've lost that as an art form. They don't understand how to do it anymore. So they have to relearn that skill set. And all of this like hating and all this political, social bull crap where folks put that above all instead of actually entertaining people, right? Because if you looked at it like some of the indies that have popped up like the Rippaverse, you would think that these guys would be all over it, right? And that this is something that is injecting life. Not to say that everybody's going to like it, but it's injecting life in this industry, which is what it is that we need right now. You're seeing provable enthusiasm, especially now. If you wanted to believe someone was just like, we just caught lightning in a bottle and never happened again. And then it happened again with ISOM 2, as you see our success. That should tell you right there this is real. That doesn't just benefit our company, it benefits other should you use the energy as such, but that's not what it is they do. CBR has yet to cover it. Period. They have yet to cover it. All of these major comic book publications, I guess you can call them that, from the Comics Beats of the world and the even the Bleeding Asshole, who covered us in a hit piece the first time, have said nothing because they don't care about this stuff either. All these little entities that popped up, the Direct and Screen Rant and all these guys who care more about movies than anything else, they of course ain't gonna say anything about it. You can't get any enthusiasm, and the ones that do get enthusiasm, if they don't think a certain way, you don't rock with them, which again, that's fine with me, but I'm not the one losing here. You are. It's gonna take a lot of work. I'm a competitive person. I look at it from the competition element. I'm like, look, you got Japanese coming in America, kicking y'all's ass, and y'all own industry, and y'all ain't putting up now fight. Instead, y'all try to take credit for it. It ain't got nothing to do with you. You try to take credit for it. See, I look at it like competitors. So I'm like, all right, this is a problem. We need to be more competitive. I do not for once believe that there's no demand because I've proven that there's a demand for it. So what you gonna do with it? San Diego Comic-Con's in trouble. But this is actually indicative of the entire industry right now. They don't know what it is to do. And like I said, as normies move on to a new thing, you're going to be left with a shell of it. And you're going to be left with having to actually, from the ashes, do something with it. And it's going to be very, very difficult because now you have faulty infrastructure that you built upon these guys who really were never interested in your industry. They just used it as a tool to advance their own individual careers, like a lot of actors, actresses, and even producers, writers, and all that. It was the end thing. They came in. They have no interest in it for the most part. So, yeah, the comic book industry needs to be taken back by actual comic book people. And the Big Two has a lot of soul searching to do there as well, because again, they got a bunch of folks that probably have no business writing these books that are writing these books. If you like this video and want to get into a new comic book universe, visit Rippaverse.com. Our first campaign for ISOM 1 hit $3.7 million, and the pre-order campaign for ISOM 2 is currently live. So go check it out and watch the official launch trailer, which is the first animation of Rippaverse Studios.